But he's not. All right, so voila. Okay, here we go. Very importantly first, ladies and gentlemen, are your phones on silent? That is the first important point. Please kindly check, because one thinks that it is, and often it isn't. Dare I ask, has anyone tweeted? I've been gently prolific in my tweeting. It's been very targeted. I haven't done it for the sake of it. No? Okay. Has anyone retweeted? Oh, okay. Small amount of energy engaged there. So, many of you are engaged in FET, and pretty much all of you know about this. So that's very, very useful. So I say, esteemed speakers on the front row, ladies and gentlemen, you are also highly esteemed, of course. A big warm welcome to this parallel session on the future of science and technology, in which we're going to explore how new technologies, such as these fabulous flagships, future and emerging technologies, and scientific missions are going to change the future. Well, the future is here, right, guys? But the future, the very near future. Very, very little bit of context, but you seem to be all in the know. Some of the key words that tend to be associated with FET flagships: ambitious, highly risky, which always makes me chuckle in terms of the EU, highly risky, long-term, very large-scale R&I initiatives. One of the key points is that they are really tackling the grand interdisciplinary scientific and technology challenges that have a very high impact on society. So understanding the brain or building a quantum computer. Honestly, I almost know how to do that. I've done so much research. I've been so terrified. Truly. The flagships typically represent €1 billion initiative, and of course they're co-implemented with the member states for a period of 10 years. One of the critical things, which I guess you know because so many of you are engaged in this, is that they mobilize hundreds of public and private researchers across Europe. The whole point is that all these technologies eventually come into commercial products, okay? We talked about the well-being of society benefiting people, so that's absolutely critical. So we're going to look at that whole landscape. We're going to look at how they're going to change the future. As you well know, you can shout out how many of these are running now? Come on, let's get engaged at the outset, because you're in that awful period. It's called the, what is it called? The, what's the shift? Graveyard shift. Yeah. Come on, how many of these are running? Somebody tell me. It's like getting blood out of a bloody stone. Okay, and battery technology is going to be the focus of a call in the last year of Horizon 2020. But far more eloquently than I, ladies and gentlemen, we have a video, and I actually get to launch it because, of course, we are celebrating the flagship's 30th anniversary. So let's take a look at what it means concretely on the ground. Hopefully.
Happy birthday. Wow, 30 years already. Gifts are better given than received, so this gift is for you. Our modern world is full of gifts. Take her smartphone that enables more than just calls. It helps us explore, connects with friends, notifies our health and virtual worlds. Gifts like these can bring us health, happiness, and comfort. Next generation technology for faster analysis, accurate diagnosis, personalized treatment for a quicker recovery. Research on future and emerging technologies is unwrapping our future potential. It works by building research teams across different areas. Biologists with computer scientists can create digital monitoring devices. Physicists and designers are improving human-computer interfaces. It all starts from a small group of professionals with a shared vision, like making machines the size of molecules, batteries that never need to be charged, or virtual worlds that feel entirely real. And it grows, passed from person to person who share these visions, transforming them with their knowledge, gradually turning the dreams into reality. Like mapping the entire human brain, prosthetic limbs powered by our minds, smart clothes to help us exercise and rest. Exploring courageous ideas is not without risk, but creating green fuels, connecting brains and constructing quantum computers comes with big rewards. As we mature, we get better at these things, more able to learn from failure, more likely to harness success. This gift brings a better future closer to reality. A future we don't just dream about, but one we can actually build. Designed by connecting research teams across Europe, commanded by intelligent speech recognition, assisted by safe and secure artificial intelligence. When turning 30, there's much to celebrate, but a lot more to come. For 30 years, researchers funded by the European Union have been working on future and emerging technologies. We call it FET. One of the first dedicated research programs in the world to take a dream, a vision, for how good the future could be. FET has planted the seeds for many of the exciting technologies we see today, turning science fiction into reality. A person from the past might call it magic, but it's not magic, and it didn't happen in a day. FET is celebrating 30 years of courageous research, and its gift to you is knowledge and what we do with it. Together, we're making the future brighter, better, unbelievable.
We're actually clapping the entry of those latecomers, not the video. Look, they're going up the stairs there. Welcome, welcome, welcome to you. Who knows, what was the word, the key word used more than once in that video to define these? Thank you. Oh, did you write the script? You don't count, you're at the commission. Sorry, no. Anyone else? I should have said that in my disclaimer. Courageous. Exactly. Courageous ideas. And it said it's not without risk. Lots of rewards. I think risk rewards is something that will come up in the conversation, and something that's very interesting for me, who isn't a researcher and not one of these big brains, but is a European citizen. It says, define a better future. What does better future mean? Because it means different things for different people. So that's very interesting points that I hope we might be able to cover in today's discussion. So, first of all, just to headline the chat with all of my lovely speakers who I'll introduce in a moment, I'd like you to please give a very warm welcome to our first speaker, who is a renowned scientist of the FET program, Dario Floriano. He's full professor and director of the Laboratory of Intelligent Systems at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Lausanne. And also, since 2010, he's the founding director of the Swiss National Centre of Competence. I love that, as though there might be incompetence in it. Competence in robotics. If there was incompetence, that would be terrifying. A 12-year funded program that brings together 20 research laboratories in the creation of future intelligent robots. So, voilà, monsieur. Give him a warm round of applause, please.
Thank you very much.
That's your clicker. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to stop her because she was going. Okay, great. So, may we have the video, please? My slides. Great, thank you. So I guess I'm talking to the converted here. I'm going to tell you, I've been asked to talk about science and research. I've been lucky to be funded by FET for almost 20 years by now. My specialty is bio-inspired artificial intelligence and robotics, with a special emphasis on drones. And I've been involved and funded in FET projects dealing with plant-inspired robots, neuronal Darwinism in the brain, swarmanoid robots, all sorts of things. But here I want to show to you a short story of 2 or 3 projects which have led eventually to companies without us even expecting this. So the very first project, this was a long time ago, was led by Marco Dorigo, was called Swarmbots. The idea was to have a swarm of small robots that would, by physically connected to each other, have synergies and do work much harder than a single robot could do. And one of the things we did at that time was to take inspiration from the way in which ants communicate with each other using chemical substances, and they form long chain to pull heavy prey to their nest. And we thought, hey, we could use many of these robots to pull a child to safety. This was the child of my assistant in the lab. She was super scared, but eventually, see, a lot of these small robots can actually go and take a person to safety. Now, you say, okay, this is research, we did a lot of great work, and this was one of the founding projects of what today is called swarm robotics and swarm intelligence. Now, as we were dealing with these robots and how they managed to coordinate their work, we started to look at the possibility of taking collective intelligence to the sky, and we developed a number of small drones that could communicate with each other and establish a radio ad hoc network between two users on the ground. Essentially, these are, imagine you have two people on the ground, like two rescuers, and they communicate with their mobile phone. Instead of using regular GSM frequency, they use the frequencies coming from these drones, which typically would not be as jammed as the regular frequencies in rescue scenarios. And the beautiful thing here was that the drones communicate to each other to distribute in the sky, detect the signals from the ground, and connect the people autonomously without being pre-programmed, even as the users move around. So that's great. Now, these drones did not use any vision, so they had to fly at different altitude. The Civil Protection of Switzerland was very interested in this, and they started a research program on their own to take this to actually to real scenarios. And then we said, okay, but if you fly closer to the ground, you need to have some way of perceiving the environment. And so we said, what can you bring on board a small drone that has very little energy available, very small weight? And we looked at the way in which insects perceive obstacles, and they do collision-free flight. Essentially, insects use compound eyes, which are very different from our cameras. Our cameras essentially have a dense retina like our eyes, and they have only one single lens that projects all the photons on that particular flat retina. And that has a number of problems because our field of view is relatively restricted, and instead insects have a huge field of view, almost 360 degrees. Why is that? Because they have a lot of small eyes pointing in different directions, and each of those eyes is specialized in detecting very small features, but especially they are detecting motion coming from the image as the insect flies around. And we know that insects use this for attitude stabilization, collision-free flight, homing, chasing, mating, all sorts of things. And so we said, hey, could we replicate an insect compound eye? And here it was another FET project called Curvace, which was the curved artificial compound eye. This was a team of neurophysiologists, electronic engineers, neuromorphic engineers. We designed the very first artificial compound eye, which you see here in the picture. It has 700 eyes. It is modeled upon the eye of the Drosophila. Now you see it's larger than an insect eye, but it has 700 eyes just like the Drosophila. It has a total weight less than a gram, and the total thickness is less than 1 millimeter. And although it is larger, it is 3 times faster in response time than the Drosophila eye. It has the same properties in terms of adaptivity to contrast of light, and the same properties in terms of detecting motion. Now you say, okay, it's larger. And when we published this in PNAS at that time, a paper in Nature came out where they found the very first evidence of an artificial compound eye in nature. And this was in the trilobites, living 250 million years ago in the floor of the oceans. And if you look at the trilobite compound eye, we have the fossil here, it's very similar to our very first technological compound eye. So give us 250 million year more, and 250 million times 2 million budget, and I'm sure we're going to get to the Drosophila eye. But even that eye, that technology was sufficient to be put on a drone and allowed us, our drone, to avoid obstacles, for example, trees, and at the same time maintain altitude from the ground, because the drone, just like insects, perceives the ground as an obstacle and tries to avoid it as gravity tends to fly it down to the ground. That means we have a super light control system, obstacle avoidance, attitude stabilization, altitude maintenance, that only requires a few lines or a few kilobytes of codes and is approximately 1,000, working at 1,000 Hertz. So it works in a lot of different conditions. But that time, we had so much experience developing drones and sensors for drones and artificial intelligence that we created a company called SenseFly, which in 4 years grew up to almost 200 employees and was eventually acquired by Parrot in 2016, became at that time the #1 company providing solutions for professional drones. So that was a very good success story where FET actually influenced a lot. Now, no matter how good your perceptual system is, if you fly in confined environments like this is the Fukushima reactor disaster, Sooner or later, it will hit an obstacle or a cable, and the drone will fall on the ground, and then it's a disaster. And so we decided to say, hey, how can we protect drones so that when they collide with the environment, they do not fall on the ground? And we looked at insects. I sent a student to Harvard University, and the student was filming these flies, and it turns out that flies, when they fly in a very cluttered environment, they stop avoiding things. They simply bump into things. And because they have this soft exoskeleton that absorbs the collision, including the compound eyes, they can, and with the legs, they can resist these collisions and continue to fly. And we said, great, okay, we can put cages around our drones. The problem is that if you put a cage, yes, it will protect the drone, but if there is a collision, it will destabilize it, and then the propulsion system will drive it against a different direction and possibly fall on the ground, and this takes a lot of energy. And so we said, instead of copying nature, we could simply replace the outer cage with a gimbal, passive gimbal system, that absorbs the collision and the friction so that the propulsion system passively remains stable and the drone can fly. And with this system, our students participated to the Drones for Good competition in Abu Dhabi, where they had to find a lost person in a semi-collapsed building across a river. And they were the only robotic solution who could fly through pipes because they could avoid collisions with a camera attached to the propulsion system without any active stabilization system and locate the person. They won $1 million US, and using that $1 million US, they started a company, the second spin-off company, which is called FlyAbility. The company says the only collision-tolerant drone in the world. This is, you can send it into closed environments. It's used, for example, for inspecting tanks, for inspecting situations like this under the ground. You don't need to be a skilled pilot because you look at what the drones look through the camera, and you fly, the drone will just hit obstacles and fly anywhere around the world. So this is now the leading solution for indoor inspection. The company already has 75 employees and has already booked, I think it's public, I can say, sales for more than $10 million US equivalent. So with this, I just want to say that we start from serendipitous research in FET, we do crazy things, and then suddenly there is a great opportunity that comes up and can turn into companies. Now, my end message is that FET, in my opinion, is as close as a scientist or an engineer can get to science fiction without losing reputation. And also we can have a real impact. And what I really hope is that FET continues in the future, because I believe that technological leadership really requires basic research and requires a pipeline of basic research with a lot of variability in addition to applied research. Thank you very much for your attention.
Stay with me. No, don't disappear. Don't disappear. You're staying. Honestly, I have to ask this question. That is just so tremendous. I love that. What was that? The only collision-tolerant drone in the world. I love it. When you sit next to people at dinner parties and they ask what you do, and you tell them, do they go, oh, or do they go, oh, shit, put me somewhere else? I'd be terrified. I'd think, oh, my God, am I à la hauteur? That is super, super fascinating and has so many applications. And I presume will also have applications. I mean, already there are applications in war zones with drones, but is there, you talked about inspections. You showed, is that an intention? Where is it going?
So both companies avoid developing solutions for the military. So this is something that with the students we discussed very early on. And we said we do not take money from the military. So they avoid this. Even if you go to the FlyAbility website, you go and you see they avoid those type of application now at the moment, of course. Then we'll see what happens in the future.
But applications, let's say, in places where there is an earthquake.
Oh yes, of course.
That's sort of, I should have specified. Sorry, when there is more when you are
absolutely
when time is critical.
Yes. And
there's chaos on the ground, and you're trying to find people. Would that be?
Absolutely, that's one of the applications. So search for rescue is one of the clear applications. Now, clearly, when you go, there is in the professional world, there are a lot of situations where you need to have inspections. And there are inspection of bridges, for example. Under the structure of the bridge, there is a lot of truss and cables, and you want to send a machine that does that dangerous thing instead of sending people up there. So yeah, it's a big there is a big demand for this type of machines.
I think it's very fascinating. I think, and honestly, personally, I will never look at a fly in the same way again. I spend my time chasing it around the room, trying to whop it And now when I see what it's doing there and bouncing off things, I'm thinking, maybe I should be a little bit kinder. Okay, so take a seat. Don't take a seat in the first one, if you may, but please kindly take a seat there. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to, in this session, rather than use Slido so that we can have your full attention, we do have some lovely ladies, gentlemen with microphones, so we'll be taking questions from the floor live, vocally, in the Luddite, old-fashioned way. I hope that's fine. So, can you now applaud nice and generously, please, for the other speakers in our session? First of all, Daniela Corda, who is Italian National Research Council, Institute of Protein Biochemistry in Italy, and also, as you may know, co-chair of the FET Flagship Board of Funders and member of the FET Programme Committee, so I think you're going to be very well placed to answer lots of questions in this discussion. We've got Dynamo Dermot Diamond from Dublin City University. How much alliteration can we get in there? In Ireland, Insight Centre for Data Analytics and Vice Chair of the FET Advisory Board. Also, we have Marcus Aspelmeyer from the University of Vienna, from the Faculty of Physics, a researcher in quantum technologies. And we have Christina Edström from Uppsala University, Department of Chemistry, Angstrom Laboratory, Sweden, who is a researcher in battery technologies. So that's absolutely fabulous. Welcome. We're going to explore the emerging digital technologies that are expected to transform our lives. We're going to try and put a focus on the real impact of this. That's critical, the added value of a research program like FET, things also that maybe could work better, but certainly its added value and its impact, the key ingredients that make it successful and worth further funding. So I'm going to start from the sort of looking at the scientists. I'll start with Christina, actually. What's interesting is we talk about so many things came out in that first session, areas, where do we prioritize, what do we focus? But what are the emerging digital technologies that are really going to transform our lives in the next 10 years? And how does FET fit into that? For Europe in general. So that's a question for Christina, for Marcus, and for Dario. So who would like to start? Christina, I would like you to start, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes. How many of you have used the battery today? I think everyone. We have already seen some fantastic examples of coming technologies, drones. We have seen today self-driving vehicles. We have electric airplanes coming up. It's only the imagination that can sort of stop what's coming up from the digital area. But they need to be powered in some way, and they need to be powered by batteries. And for me, taking on the leadership to coordinate what we hope could be a FET flagship for batteries, it's called Battery 2030 Plus, is really because I believe that you need long-term visionary research to play a role also for the applications. And I think the lithium battery is actually, that I've used today, all of you, is a beautiful example of this. If you go back to the 60s and 70s, it was a science made in Europe, UK, France, and a little bit US, a little bit Denmark, that led to the lithium battery. The ideas of it, but it was in Japan they made it commercial. I started as a battery scientist mid-95 with a project with Ericsson. Ericsson was one of the mobile phone companies at that time. It's not any longer, and the mobile phones were heavy and big, and they told me, we want to make these mobile phones smaller. We want them to be like music machines, small computers. We thought that was science fiction. Mm-hmm. And today, it's actually transformed our behavior a lot. We are constantly connected. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to make even better batteries, smaller, sustainable, and safer and affordable, to really make all these ideas come true. Mm-hmm. And that's why we, in this Battery 2030 Plus, we launch a mission where we hope you can support us, so we can have a fourth flagship.
And interestingly, I mean, when we, again, and I will come to you in just a moment, Marcus. So I suppose batteries is one area where sounds simplistic, where you might be facing less from the public. There is less difficulty in communicating the value than perhaps some other areas of emerging digital technologies or the digital transformation.
I think you're wrong, actually.
Okay.
I don't agree. I think that we see that we have a climate change, that we have air quality problems. So I think there is a strong drive now to really buy electric vehicles or plug-in vehicles, at least in Europe, and it's coming now. It's really coming now. So I think there is an awareness that batteries can be helpful. They're also very efficient and flexible, and we also talk a lot about renewable electricity. The increase in electricity globally is really shooting up.
But that was my thing. I was saying you have less resistance from a public.
Oh, you meant less?
Yes, I said less. You have less. I thought you were going to say to me, no, everybody is terrified of batteries. Less resistance, less fear than possibly in other domains.
I have much more resistance around year 2000, I can tell you.
Okay,
interesting. How boring this box you're working on.
Okay.
Sorry, I misunderstood.
No, not at all. So, for you, do you agree, Marcus? What's your thoughts? Where are we seeing these big transformations coming, and how does FET really impact in that? We talked about long term, and supporting a long term vision is critical. What's important for you?
So what I would like to throw in is a radically new way of processing digital information by exploiting the laws of quantum physics. And I guess many of you have heard that already, of course, but the underlying idea is that through the laws of quantum science, objects, systems can behave, for example, as if they were in two places at once, in two stages at once. So if you now have digital information, zeros and ones, you also can have those superpositions, which allow a multitude of possible new applications, and this is where FET actually comes in. So it turns out, if you look back, so the long term is actually a long time ago already, Europe has been funding these first projects on already 20 years ago that exploited these initial ideas. And there, Europe was really the first one worldwide to start dedicated programs. And now, after 20 years, we are at the stage where we basically are ready to take the next step. And it is still a courageous next step, because there is no yet well-defined killer application for the quantum computer or others. But the goal is really to define now these applications together with industries and use what we have learned over the last 20 years together with FET activities in this flagship to the next level to have an impact on society.
And just perhaps, again, it's a bit poetic, my question, or something, or existentialist. You said, and to quote, there's not yet defined a killer application. Is that because of a lack of something, or is it just everything in its own time? Is it? Do you see what I'm trying to get at? Is it just there still needs to be more work, there's still more nuance, there's still...
Well, the point is that what quantum technologies provide are, to a large extent, again, in their working principles, so radically different that people still need to find ways how to use them. So the laser has been called a product without a market when it was originally invented. So basically, there are these, you have these new technologies at hand, there are ideas, but now you still need this curiosity-driven approach together now with industry. I think this is the big added value of the flagship, that now there's a concerted action within Europe where the researchers together with industry come together and push that.
I thought there was this, I mean, if you look in a simplistic way of researching, that there is a kind of a race to commercialize. You've got a lot of big players in there who realize they need to be, because we need this, because in 30, 40 years we don't have the energy to cope with all the processing that's going on at the moment. So there is big interest from the big players.
So it's clear that it provides possible solutions to the grand challenges of the future. Right? So this is definitely there. And this is, I think, what exactly the idea now is for the flagship, to explore that and exploit that.
And to make it concrete. So okay. So for you, sir, can I come and ask you the same question? You know, these emerging digital technologies, you gave some very good examples there. Where do you see things happening? And again, the value of FET? Here we heard about industry, here we heard about a long-term vision. What makes sense for you?
So if you're talking, is this on? Yes. So if you're talking about 10 years, essentially is after tomorrow, because we are looking at things that are taking place now in the labs. And everybody talks these days about AI. We have seen it. I fully believe that AI is going to play an important role. But how do we get AI and use AI through devices, through hardware, through the real world? And so when I started, I came from AI, so I had a computer science background. And very soon I realized that AI without a physical body makes not much sense. So I think there is a lot to do with robotics. And of course, that's the field I'm working in. But if we look at what is happening here in Europe, also in Asia, Asia is investing massively in robotics and AI. So I was just talking to my colleagues earlier on. In China has set aside 25 billion euros equivalent in 2015, so that the Guangdong region, which is north of Hong Kong, becomes the center of intelligent robotics in the world, in China and in the world. And Hong Kong now, which will be absorbed by China soon, they realize they are next to Shenzhen, Guangdong. They say, oh, we are a finance center, we have to do something. What did they do? They put $1 billion in robotics. Because that's where AI comes to the physical world. So I think the future is the human-robot symbiosis with the AI and all this data. How it will come about, I think it's still unpredictable, but something you guys are working in the labs will come the next killer application for sure.
And do you think, when you say, do you say that with just, because I was just listening in the AI session, when you say, you know, they've just made this massive investment, so we know what the deal is with Europe, we know where the frustrations are, we know where the positive sides are. Do you say, oh, good God, that's what we need to be doing? Or are you realistic about the difference? Because, we talk about the poor relation all the time with the US. And
I actually don't think that we necessarily need to be on a competitive ground. I think they are looking at what we do. Okay. And instead of trying, we close, we do our own thing, and we try to match or compete, I think we just start having a dialogue with them and seeing and discussing with them. I just want to say, this is where things are going to go. Robotics and AI could be with quantum computing. Definitely batteries are going to power all of this. But I believe that the symbiosis between the human and the machine through a physical device is going to be the future for the next 10 years at least.
Okay. So maybe somewhere in China or US, right at this moment, people are sitting on a panel and going, God damn those Europeans, they're so much better than us in all of this. We really need to learn. So, but nice, I absolutely agree. I mean, actually not jesting when you say there's no if Europe keeps talking about being a key player in a global setup, then it's not about the competition, it's about a healthy competition or collaborating within a competitive framework. That's critical. I think that was a Darwin quote I've just mashed up somewhere. Anyway, thank you very much for that. I'm just going to turn and slightly change the angle, because again, just to focus on, I think what's key is the impact, what's enabling, what's very specific. Anything else that you haven't heard that's very specific about this program, that's very important for Europe? I'll start with you, Dermot. Why it needs to be funding, what's so unique?
Yes, maybe if I could just explain. I'm an old-timer. So I was working in the 1980s when I did my thesis. I had the first laser-printed thesis in Queen's University in Belfast. I had the first computer in the research group. I was using MS-DOS, Microsoft. It wasn't even Windows. Windows hadn't been invented. Apple were only beginning to sell products. Google had not been heard of. The mobile phone had not been invented. I'm really old.
Oh. So you could actually be the grandfather of that boy who I said, oh dear.
But when you think that's just 30 years ago, and it's astonishing that these industries have emerged, creating huge employment and huge disruption, huge benefits to society, huge changes. If we project forward 30 years from now, I think the rate of disruption and evolution of these new products and services is only going to accelerate. So that means we have a daunting task in front of us. We cannot sit still. We have to invent the industries of the future. And how do we find these industries? We have to take risks. We have to have innovative and creative programs. FET Open is the only program that allows what I would I would relate it to an undirected search of ideas. So if you know about optimization theory, you can have a directed search. Directed searches will return to you more or less, hopefully, what you expect. An undirected search can give you completely different answers that you can't predict. And the FET Open program is completely undirected. It's open. You can get very unconventional combinations of people. So that program needs to be retained and preserved within the next Horizon program. The FET Proactive then allows directed ideas to be scaled up, again at a level that's not available in any other program. And then finally, the flagships and missions, there's a lot of debate about these. I think what we will see is that the area I do a lot of work in, which is in fundamental materials chemistry, that is the integration of materials into devices with customized properties is going to accelerate. Previously, it could take 20, 30 years to bring a new material through to a device and a service. That window is going to contract significantly as we bring rapid prototyping into research laboratories. And that means we've got huge opportunities if we take risks. It also means that the link between societal impact and the emergence of new ideas from fundamental science is going to need a strong link. So I think whatever happens in the next framework program, we need that type of concerted, long-term, funded program like the flagships to be preserved and linked with societal impact.
Mm-hmm. And do you think, is it important for you, I mean, coming now on the more, I guess citizen, but I prefer the word person, the individual on the street, that there is a notion, especially because there is talk about linking the FETs obviously with missions. These missions are supposed to grasp the public attention, be very targeted. Do you think that there is also a value for really helping the average person understand that in that domain, Europe is strong because you are mobilizing people from all sorts of countries. You're getting all their brains and all of their energy to come together to solve some big issues. Do you think, or you think that's not out there? It's very much an echo chamber.
Well, I think there are two extremes in these long-term, large-scale programs. We don't really have a definition of what a mission is at the minute, but a mission could be configured to solve a major societal challenge. That's one thing. But it could also be configured to solve a major scientific barrier. That if we don't break this barrier, then we can't solve the problems of the future. And these, if you like, are the two extremes. And I think in between we have a continuum that sits between these. And somehow, if we abandon the idea of a flagship that tackles a fundamental scientific challenge, I think we then lose out because the societal solutions depend on that concerted action. If we don't bring together the best minds across Europe in a focused way on social challenges and on fundamental scientific challenges, I think we will lose out.
Thank you. So I will come to you, Daniela, last and say, for you, what have you not heard? What really for you is the impact? Why is it important? Why does it need funding?
Okay. It has to be funded because it's good, and this is a good enough reason, I think. Not only that, but I should say it's not my opinion, but it's the opinion of all the member states that have representative in the board of funders. So the majority of the member states think in this way. Why is it good, and what is the added value for Europe? I think that the construction of FET within the H2020 framework program has been very efficacious because you have it together with the ERC, and you know that the first pillar, the excellence science, has built a kind of pipeline that was not there before. And in fact, people were kind of confused at the beginning of Horizon 2020, but it worked out extremely well. In fact, you can look at the number of applications that FET has received in these years. And the construction goes that you ask for excellent science, starting with the single scientist application, ERC. Then you move to, as you said, courageous idea, very, breaking through ideas, with FET Open. Then you kind of organize in a top-down, let's say, way, but still after consultation and so on, FET Proactive. And finally, you have the huge effort of all the experts in a given field that has been identified by the community again in the flagship. This makes a pipeline that offers all possibility to the scientific community and to the industry, small, medium enterprise, but I mean science in very general term, to attack, I mean, as you said, courageous idea, very new idea that will make the difference. And you have seen already in this short movie that we saw at the beginning, if you go through, you know, the FET Open that have been financed in these years, it's really great. But to have this type of proposal, people need scientists. The community needs to be free of a free mind. So you need, as it is ERC and as it is in FET Open, to be ready to attack any problem that Europe will help attacking. So the freedom of research and the push toward the application. So I think that this has been the greatest thing in the last framework program, which we should, and if I may say, we must maintain in the next framework program, because we would lose a lot if we would put in a box a FET Open or a FET Proactive. So we need to have it with that degree of freedom. The structure, as also Dermot said, should be the same. Now, you know, people like to change names and so on. We don't want to discuss this now, but it is important that that kind of request from the scientific community is really observed and put forward. I mean, this is what I see as the added value of the last year. And of course, I mean, the answer to you is yes, it should be maintained, of course. And in fact, we should need a higher budget.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
And just to just stick with that, because you said, I love that, I mean, quite simply, it's good. It's good. So you've been very clear where it works. I love that, you know, to say, you know, scientists need this free mind, but they need this push. There needs to be a push. You said it's the opinion of the member states. So I remembered we had a little bit of a conversation around this when I moderated the FET last year. I think it was in autumn. That relationship, it's coming up everywhere. It came up this morning. How is that working? Because it's, you know, it needs that. You're saying broadly, is that, would everybody say that's relatively agreed with that experience, that there is that woof from the member states, that it's perhaps a non-typical area where it's actually functioning quite well without too many issues between EU national level? Anyone want to weigh in on this? No? You're being terribly demure.
No. But I didn't get the.
Is this an area? You said the opinion of the member states is it's good. They're up for it. They're up for also funding it. Is this the experience of that it is something that works well between the EU and the member states? There is that drive to support it. There is an understanding of its added value to Europe.
Well, may I?
You may.
There is agreement on the added value. There have been a lot of complaint of the low success rate, but the reason is clear. We had many requests, which means that the community, the scientific community, is ready for that type of program, but too many requests means a low, it's not a bad thing to have a low success rate. It means only that the request is very high. So the scientific community and always I say scientific in an ample way. So I mean industry, academia, and so on, has responded extremely well. So this is what the representative of member states, as I also am, have to notice and bring to the Commission. So the Commission knows, the member states know. We have to see whether then the circle is someone will close the circle. Okay. But the information is there.
No? Did you want to know? Anyone else? The value that it adds to the national agendas or the relationship at large?
I might just make a quick comment that it's difficult for politicians to back very long-term programs because it cuts across the voting cycle. And there's not much votes in fundamental research. So it's difficult for them, and I think this word courageous is the key word. The European Union has to be courageous in this respect. This is like building a cathedral. You can't do it in a couple of years. And the problem is that once a momentum gets behind a short-term objective, which society seems to understand, like, let's get rid of all the plastic in the oceans. Now, that's a very attractive proposal, and it should be done. And there's probably votes on that because the citizen can understand it. But if you go down the street and you stop a citizen and ask the citizen about the positive impact of quantum technologies, the citizen won't have the faintest idea what you're talking about. So, you know, there are two conflicting things here, and I think we need to be courageous in pushing these scientific ideas and assisting the politicians to understand the importance and to relay that to the citizens, ultimately, who vote for the politicians in the member states. So it's not easy. We have to be courageous.
May I? But, you know, one way to put it is that politicians speak about innovation, increase jobs, and if you want innovation, you need good ideas. You need totally novel ideas. If you want to compete with the rest of the world, and you need to start from, you know, courageous behavior. So you're absolutely right. We go with the cycle of 4 years, and we need more than 4 years. But maybe we have to teach our politicians to learn how to look forward and understand that we will lose the competition if we want to sit on what we have and not being brave enough to break the wall of, courageousness.
But I think you have to educate the public at large, because we live at times where speed and disposability are the watchwords. So if you want to convince that solving these big challenges needs time, then that needs to go out into the public domain. Let me throw things out to the floor, because there's a lot of you who are obviously engaged or familiar with this. Is there something that we haven't touched on that for you is what makes the difference in these flagships? Why are they different? Why are they valuable? Why are they very typical European project? No? Have you all had too many of these little chocolate Sachertorte cubes and you're completely, ooh? Come on, because we do have a microphone. If anyone wants to, very happy for you to just listen, but I don't want to miss anybody if you're not. No? Okay. So this question, what I would like to know, and particularly, Marcus, if I come back to you, is this issue of, you were saying, Dermot, 30 years, my God, all of this has happened in 30 years. It's absolutely incredible. We're talking about quantum here because you're involved in the quantum flagship. And I think that since its launch, I don't know whether there are any key areas that you can tell me where you have specifically seen an evolution. You've touched on where you see it should be going, but where is it, what has concretely evolved in that time?
So I think there's one thing that is important to stretch. So the quantum flagship is not just a quantum computer. So we have different pillars of different technologies. Computing is one of them, and is certainly the most ambitious, forward-looking one, with the most challenges also to essentially overcome in the long run. But we also have simulations of quantum systems. We have communication, and we have sensing. And the level of maturity and impact for society, so economic impact and in general impact for applications, is very different across these different domains. So we have, for example, in the domain of communication, we already do have markets, we have companies out there, we have world leaders in, for example, quantum cryptography. Companies that have already been started many years ago, that spearheaded also worldwide the development, that are front runners and that are just coming back on the global competition comment, competing on a global scale and also looking into these markets globally. And then on the other end, and then we have right now a couple in the sensing domain. We have startups popping up together between industry and universities. So this is sort of delayed compared to the quantum communication, but it's coming now. So you see this gradual involvement in all these different pillars on a different time scale. And basically what has happened since the launch of the flagship is that there was a selection of several projects for each of these pillars, again with different, I would say, levels of industrial penetration.
You're obviously not doing enough to entertain
I know.
Bye.
I could dance.
You're going to miss out, but okay. Ciao, see ya. It won't be as good elsewhere. Okay, go for it. Sorry, have to say that. Nobody else is leaving this room. Or I will zap you with that, which apparently can explode the room, correct? Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you, sir. Yes.
No, I think I was finished.
No, you weren't. No, I didn't scare. I'm protecting him from those mean people who left. Yes, you were done. You were finished. No, go on. You were talking about the communication and the things that are already happening
so what
in that
has happened
time.
Since the launches now, there are a couple of projects being identified, and they essentially started now. Right? So with, again, in these different pillars with now working across trying to engage, I need to say that really once more, trying to engage industrial partners. They're one of the challenges now is now really to identify possible markets, to identify the questions for which quantum technology provides answers to. So this is something that is always difficult when you start a company, or when you want to go out with technology that has been developed during your research, and now you want to make an impact to society. So you also have to understand what are the questions that society has right now. So what are the challenges, both on a grand scheme, but also on a smaller scheme?
Sorry, they are literally running with terror out the door in case I name them and shame them. Oh my God. Okay, that's funny. So, you may say something. There you go. Thank you.
So we have these two funding instruments in FET. I mean, the spectrum from FET Open, which is like 3-4 millions now, all the way to the monsters, which, you know, for the good and for the bad flagships. And one of the things I think is important to keep this diversity in the next framework program, because Europe has the weakness and the strength, which is the diversity. Many of the ideas in AI came from Europe. Many of the things in robotics were first developed in Europe and then taken elsewhere. And I think we must be careful to cultivate this diversity, to have a funding that is, you know, small funding, a few millions that goes to small teams, and we keep a population of different things ongoing. Because, and same for the flagship, I guess now flagships are changing as well, the agility they have, but it's important to keep it. If you look at more, I don't want to say it's a bad word, maybe homogeneous cultures, which may be totally wrong, maybe to my ignorance, like China, these huge places. So they have the resources and they can put things in one direction, but we have, for the same number of millions of people, so many different cultures, so many different ideas, so many different sensibilities. What does it mean for a car to take a certain autonomous car to take a certain action in Italy, where we drive in a certain style, or in Switzerland, where we also drive in different style? So also there is a cultural dimension that I think we are very well positioned to study.
Anybody, I mean, just while we're on that topic, any thoughts? Because we are at a critical time. There's all the discussions about the next MFF. Not quite sure where things are at. We've got the European Innovation Council, so we've got all sorts of things in the mix. Anything specifically that you ladies and gents feel, right, we need to really think about this for the, you know, for the next evolution, for the next 10, 20 years? You've been looking at places where research might be focused, but how about actually how it's structured? We talked about we could do with more funding, but we can always do with more funding. Yes, Dermot, do you want to start? And then I will certainly come to you, Daniela.
I think one of the things that we really need, and I think Europe is a great place to think about this, would be the idea of open laboratories, where we create regions or even parts of cities where we pilot technologies as they emerge. One of the killing areas for new technologies is a medium scale up. So if you have a good idea in a research lab, maybe I can make 5 or 6 devices and maybe 10. I've got rapid prototyping, maybe I can scale that up to 40, 50, but it rapidly becomes not the business of the university. So you hand it over to an SME, and then the SME doesn't have a means to support itself to produce 1,000 of these, or 2,000. And I've often been approached by people, entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, people working in multinationals who will say, I'll make you 10 devices as a sort of a gift, or I'll make you 10 million as a business proposition, but don't ask me to make 1,000.
Okay, yes.
So if we can somehow capture these emerging services and technologies and devices and find ways to actually push them out into society to get that feedback on those 1,000 or so devices, and think of mechanisms to make that happen in an effective way and turn it around, I think we'll be on to something really exciting. And this is a type of a public-private research nexus that needs to come together. If we can do that, I think we can open up a lot of these new technologies, new services, and de-risk them and make them a lot more attractive for investment and scale up.
I was going to ask you, because I think perhaps you won't have any, because you were saying this is the kind of thing we need, but do you have any examples from other countries where you could say it's like that? Because you were talking about open labs, sort of regions, areas for testing. Is there anything where you go, they do that here, or they do that here, or that's a good example?
There may be people better situated in the panel than me to answer that, but Dario was going for it.
No, it's not a lab, but if you look in Shenzhen, what they do is that they don't have open labs, but they have very rapid prototyping. So you have something, they don't even develop the devices in the lab. They send it to a company, they do something, and it comes back in a few weeks. So this is possible, but of course it requires a different way of being able to set up a business and run a business and hire people and dismiss people.
Daniela, you wanted to, talking about what's next.
You asked an important question, which is the structure. Of course, we are at the point of discussing Horizon Europe, right? Which is built in these days. So we cannot really say it will be like that or like that, because we don't know yet. But still, we know that FET Open and FET Proactive will be in this European Innovation Council. Now, no matter what, it's not yet the place where to discuss Horizon Europe, but still, I would like to say that structure is very important, and what I tried to say before is that for the community to maintain the freedom of propose whatever, is a good idea without having some kind of box where they fit in is very important. So and you said something similar. So in structuring Horizon Europe, I would strongly recommend to all the people that are working at that to make extremely clear that FET Open and FET Proactive are there. And I think that the panel, we are all agree on that. And even if the name will be changed, which is very possible, there must be a way to communicate that, you change everything, not to change anything. Should be really the word, because otherwise it will take 3 years to get back people to under 3 years, 1 year, I don't know, but time. It will take time, and time is crucial. It will take time to bring back people to the likeness that they have now for the FET. Sure. And I think this is very important, again, for innovation, competition, number of jobs, etc., etc. So I think
consistency and clarity is absolutely key.
Exactly.
Yes, I was going to turn to you because you were quiet like the Sphinx, and I was going to say, please, come in.
I am quite ignorant. I would like to ask the other panelists, why do we have this discussion about FET? We all like it, and I like that it's bottom-up. We have ideas, we can formulate them, we can find consortia, we can have something coming up, But what is, and then I see this question of not having it in the horizon Europe, and what is the argument against the FET that we need who are positive to really communicate? Do we know?
No, I don't know. I think I'm.
So why is this sort of making so invisible in the future?
Oh, I can't answer that question for you. All I know is, but I don't know if I'm giving the correct answer here, that it's at a sort of a sensitive moment, that there's not a huge clarity, that there's a huge agreement that it's required and more funding, but we're still sitting and having the discussions. We are on the eve of discussions about so many things, funding-wise, in the next step under the new commission. And in theory, before the elections, but good luck with that.
Yes.
So I don't know if I've grasped your...
No, because, I mean, we are sitting and we are a big consortium and think we have a splendid ideas on to move Europe and research on batteries forward for a better society. And we know that we could have a few years, but what is the long term? How can we really survive in long term? Because that's something we really want to build for.
For sure.
And that's it. You need time to really build a consortium where you have cross-disciplinarity, because I think societal aspects are important. Robotics are also important for batteries, I would say. How do you make materials? How do you make electrodes? How do you put together cells? Machine learning, artificial intelligence too, to really understand what's happening in these batteries. So, I mean, we want to take part in the digital era. Also for the batteries, for the future. Not just traditional materials cooking, like we have done before.
I hear you. I'm not the one who's going to be negotiating the next budget, but I hear you. I mean,
so if anyone is, we have splendid ideas.
Just to say, I mean, and just a question, because I'm always curious about the relationships and the collaboration, because everything in life can be fabulous, but if there isn't good collaboration and it doesn't go to market, doesn't get implemented, if we don't get it making sense for people and benefiting, then we seem to be in agreement that there's good stuff happening. But I'm just curious, because specifically for you, you're publishing a manifesto around these.
Right,
and
yes.
how seamless was it to get all of the parties engaged, to get on side, to be one vision for this manifesto? Was it a fairly simple exercise or complex?
It's of course it's both ways. It's simple in the way that we know what kind of visions we have. We want to make batteries that you can charge faster. We want to reduce the amount of critical raw materials. We want to make it sustainable, etc. But of course, the instruments, what to do to reach these goals, is a lot of discussion, of course, to formulate the sort of what should we start with, what is long term, and how we continue. And I think we have had very good discussions, and now we need to open up and bring in this cross-disciplinarity, because we are mainly battery scientists and we need other people to come in. And that is where we stand today.
Let me open to the floor again. Nobody's going to help me out. No. Oh, look, there's a gentleman there. I love it. Waha! Okay, sir, please say who you are. Don't speak too fast. If it's a comment or if it's a question, to whom it is addressed. Thank you.
I think it's more of a comment. I'm Andrei Schwer from Malta. A few of the panelists know me.
Hold it close, please.
Oh, so closer.
Thank you.
Too close? Okay.
Yes, much better. Thanks.
It's just a comment mostly, just to give a slightly different spin on one of the comments that was made by the panelists. I'm sorry, the one on the left, I can't remember my left.
Here?
Yes, I can't remember your name.
Flyman.
About the different sort of cultures and sensibilities. So one can flip that around. I'm from Malta, smallest member state, and FET has been invaluable for us to be able to enter new areas and develop new, grow capacity, basically. And this is something which I don't know if it's in danger of being lost. But if it is, we must make sure it's not, and we must safeguard it. So as Daniela was saying, FET Open and FET Proactive might remain in some shape or form. But this idea of having a sort of bottom-up, excellence-based structure where it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, as long as the science is good. That is extremely good for member states like us with no history in research, really, where we're trying to establish new areas and we're trying to, well, get a leg up, basically. And it's just a comment just to say that we've really benefited a lot, and it's extremely dangerous hearing that it might be lost or it might change in ways unknown. So it's really just a comment, just to add to the echo chamber, I guess.
I'm not sure it's a danger. Maybe I'm out. Well, but yeah, it's a strong word to use. I don't think it's at that level, but hey, you know better than me from the inside. Just interestingly, because that's what's the value. I was a little bit banging on about this at the end of the first session. It is the beauty of Europe. You said yourself, diversity. It's not a blessing and a curse. That's not a good way of paraphrasing, but there are positives and then there are also complexities that come with it. That's a great example. Come on, guys. Who else is from a different country, not Italy, who can say how FET... I'm very curious as to what your experience is. Yes. Thank you.
Hi. So I want to...
Nice and close, please.
Is that better?
Oh,
yeah,
you've got to literally eat the microphone. Thank you.
So I want to share some of the frustration, actually, in terms of situation on funding the projects in European Union. And although we heard a lot about the general funding projects, I just looked up your statistics on how many applications you get every year, and you get more than 1,000 different applications, and funded, there are like 60 max per year. So rejecting so many ideas, risky ones, maybe, but rejecting so many ideas, are you really expecting to benefit from it that much? It's like shooting oneself in the leg, really.
Okay. Or some other part of the body, but yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir.
That's a very good comment, actually, because in my experience for a FET Open, it takes a couple of months to prepare, to put together the team, write the proposal. So a couple of months, maybe not full time, but a couple of months. Now, if the success rate is, let's say, 6%, then you make the calculation. It means that we are spending all the time and the taxpayers' money writing these proposals, and somebody else is spending a lot of time just revising this. So something should change there. Maybe we could have AI systems. I do not know what, but there is a problem there.
Did anybody else want to? Dermot.
AI?
Yeah.
I have a quick comment again. We're very aware of these issues in terms of the low success rate, and in the FET advisory group, we discuss this very regularly. It's definitely, if you do the maths on it, the money that's spent on preparing the proposals outweighs the amount of money being distributed, which is not good. Now, on the other hand, the huge number of applications is a reflection of the openness of the structure. Now, we could constrain the openness and say only people in certain areas can apply, then we'll get much fewer proposals. But then, in a way, you've destroyed the openness that is at the heart of the program. Of course, an easy way to solve this is to give us a lot more money. And then we can fund a lot more projects, because it's obviously very popular with the scientific community. But that's another battle. The other thing you could do is just kill it and say, it's a waste of money. So I think we sort of sit in this space at the minute. And going into the next framework program, these sorts of discussions are going on in the background. I would hate to think that the FET Open would disappear as a program. I would hope that it would be actually resourced in a much better way. By the way, we've also taken we've given advice on, for example, reducing the budget per program, having fewer calls, because in some stages the calls come out, I think, a bit too frequently, and then you get repeat proposals coming in, which artificially inflate the number of applications. So we're very aware of this as an issue, and we're discussing it continuously.
Yes, Daniela, thank you.
Well, this is true also for the program committee. We discussed this a lot. All member states are aware of the waste of energy in all this application. Actually, this is not the problem only of FET. It's a problem of many of the EU programs. ERC is the same, Marie Curie is a bit better, but there is no program that reaches the 10% of success rate. Whereas, no, there are small programs that do even 20%, but I mean, I'm talking about the research, fundamental research or applied research related program or training. And it goes that whatever is not funded up to 15 or 20%, depends which reference you take, is a waste of excellence. I mean, on over 100 applications, 15 at least should be funded, or 20. So the 20% would be a good number, which doesn't mean that 80 are bad, but 20 are excellent. So if we are below 10, we are wasting, as you said, a lot of idea. But the solution is either that the member states decide to invest more money on what is the European program, or there is a mathematic trick. You make less call with more money, and the success rate increases because not everybody will apply. But I don't like this last one, okay? I was against it.
Okay.
But this is another way.
Out of interest, you said, and the words were waste of excellence, waste of ideas. Is there any data on what happens to those applications that don't make it? Where they go?
Maybe someone here has the number, I don't have it, but I mean, I don't remember it, but several reapply, especially for FET.
Okay.
There are reapplications. Just by talking to applicants, and here we have some national contact points in the room, so they could say, those that don't reapply, often they are wasted idea, meaning that in 2 years they don't think they are competitive anymore. Something similar or something, changes in the line of research, and so it's just wasted.
Okay, it becomes redundant.
But there are reapplication, and sometimes second application can be funded. But I don't have the number.
Okay. Anyone else who has, I really want to see this, I love this, I want to see more of this, this I'd quite like, this is how I see the juxtaposition with the EIC. Any national experiences, how it fits into national agendas and programs? Are you all just too tired? You're just in listening mode. That's normally a very commission word, listening mode. But are you all just in no other? No? Okay. Yes, the gentleman here. Thank you.
So my name is Ruben Wassing from the Netherlands. I actually want to reflect on the last point that was made with the low success rate. I do some calculation with respect to the results coming in, but you see that over half of the applications end up below threshold, so not even matching excellence, etc. So if you start recalculating success rate based on the ones that get ranked, then the success rates are a lot higher than they actually appear to. You see a lot of projects being submitted that actually are not FET worthy. I mean, I'm an NCP, so I see a lot of them passing by, and some I also try to prevent from submitting. But that's something I really notice, so also to take into account.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Yeah, I'm also a reviewer for the ERC, the Advanced Awards, and of course they can have some strategies to prevent this from happening. Well, first of all, they are themed calls, so you get only proposals that fit within those themes. But also they are very largely single PI awards, and then you can block a PI. If they get a grade C, they can be blocked for several years. They get a grade, if they get through to funding, but not at the threshold, you can let them reapply. So because you have a single PI-focused dominant program, you can play these cards, and that bars people from reapplying. In FET, we've discussed this a lot in the advisory group, and it's not so easy because they're consortium-based. So it's not so easy to apply those rules, and so you get a lot of these reapplications coming back in, which inflates the numbers.
But just a comment on the gentleman over there. Yes, I agree, but the success rate for FET would have gone from 2 to 4%, which is still, far away from 15. So what you said is right, but still, it won't make the success rate an acceptable one, to my judgment. I mean.
Just again, picking up, I'm going to make one last attempt and then I promise I'll leave you in peace. just to pick up on something that was mentioned in the opening today about this whole issue between the relationship between the collaboration, industry and research and the importance of that. And you spoke about industry, the value added with industry. You actually said, we've got to invent the industries of the future. So has anyone, out of interest, got any examples themselves of where it works, where they've had some kind of good relationship with industry, where it feeds into it, where it's an excellent example of magnificent practice? Thank you, sir.
Well, that's pressure. I'm Jonas Holland from the city of Eindhoven, and in the Brainport region, we have in the ecosystem we have a lot of industry, a lot of high-tech technologies. And recently we started the Brainport Industry Campus with 25 small startups, high-tech startups. And it was like, the building was sold out in half a year. So, and it all started really on leadership of a few people within the city. And good marketing, basically, selling the dream and working from there. Mm-hmm. And then all the trouble starts, of course, but you can really start accelerating on that. So I think...
And a critical question to you when you say it started with good leadership, because I've just done an event last week on district heating with the Danes. I don't know if there are any Danes in the house, but they are the kings of district heating. And they made us all terribly jealous, the other member states in the room, saying, we have this fabulous relationship with government and, we pay high taxes, but we don't mind if we get something good off the back of it. We monitor them, they talk to us and so on. So you just said, it started with a couple of people. Sort of politically we're talking, and you said, we need to educate policymakers. What's so special? Who were these people? Why did it come about? Why there? Why the Dutch? What was the magic ingredient?
I'm not sure if it's the Dutch, but I think it has to do with the vision of a few people in the board from a political perspective. But also we started, the city was founded by corporate, by Philips. So within the DNA, the leaders always have seen we can only survive as a company if the citizens who live there have a good life. So it's both ways. The political perspective that they need industry, but also the societal perspective from the leaders of the companies, mm-hmm. That they need to have happy employees, basically. So, and I think it works both ways.
Did you, sir, a few rows down, or you were just waving, the gentleman there in the tie? No? Oh, sorry. Fabulous. I shouldn't say a woman, but it's great, because there are less at this event. Yes, can we have a microphone here, please? Thank you. Are you really 25? You're walking very slowly for a 25-year-old, I have to say. I'm not very impressed. Get jogging, come on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have a comment as part of a flagship project of the quantum technologies. So we're part of the metrology and sensoring. And at the moment, so of course we're very fond of FET Open, of FET Flagship. It's all great. It needs to be preserved. One thing in relation to the public-private relationship, which makes things hard sometimes, we now have in the flagship of the quantum technology, we need to make a collaboration agreement. This is a requirement from the Commission. And it doesn't say what it needs to be, they just say we need to have one. And so instantly two groups form, the companies on one side, academics on the other side. And I think we need to work more on a voluntary basis in terms of, so in the past we would get together if we had an event that would have mutual benefit from companies, from researchers, but this kind of forcing people to make a legal document is not helping.
So you find it not really carrot, it's too sticky, it doesn't feel like a carrot, it feels like a stick.
I think it can work. I mean, the collaboration will happen anyway, because we need each other.
So you're not a big fan?
We're in the same consortiums.
Okay, all right, let's Thank you, Christina.
I have actually one beautiful example, and that is Alistory ERI, which is a network of excellence started in FP6 by the European Commission on battery research. It's collecting 24 different groups, scientific groups around Europe. It has a industrial club. So what you do is, and it's also have a master program called MESC, paid by the European Commission. And it's actually meeting every 6 months, and there you formulate problems together with industry. They also fund some research that I find interesting. So that's one way, but it needs to have a long term. You need to build up relations, trust people. So that's why, I mean, that's also another argument for the FET flagship. It's a way of building trust, that you can really work together. I think that's a beautiful example, working with industry.
Marcus? Yeah.
So I would basically react with a question now, because these collaboration agreements, they exist, so this is not specific to the flagship. You always have that once you start collaborating with other partners. And I think it is important to have something written. In particular, you need IP protection. I mean, this is important for all of the partners. So I guess there's no way of getting rid of that completely. But what I totally agree with is one has to find a solution where not overly aggressive behavior of legal departments of big companies start to intrude the, let's say, innovation space of university groups. My experience with that, this is just a very personal experience, in the past has been a let's say, semi-good one, 90% success rate. So that normally if you start talking to people, one finds a reasonable agreement between all partners, including large-scale companies. There's a single exception, but I don't actually know what happened to that. Yeah, we almost killed the project, right, Antonella? But it was sort of, we managed in the end, so finally... Oh, yeah, it was the lawyers who saved it or killed it.
Always blame the lawyers.
Who killed it, exactly. And then once the scientists stepped in, everything went back to normal. Because it's also actually interpreting what's in these documents.
Somebody tweet that, by the way. Once the scientists stepped in.
Yeah. And the second one is just the comment on what you said. I agree. Trust is very important. And what goes along with that is actually communication, just coming back again. So I come back to my point that right now we are really looking to the questions that we have the solutions for, and this is where the communication comes in between the different stakeholders, the players. And yeah, this is what we need to establish, and this is what we are trying right now with the added help in that case now of the flagship.
I think it's a valid point. Just to say, and then I'll hear from you, sir, is I always recently come up with this quote. It's George Bernard Shaw, which is the biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. And communication requires so much energy and so much constant that trust. And we're not really living in those times where that's the kind of way we're doing that, ping it out there, get it back, gobble, but that is something else. But absolutely, it's critical. It's at the heart of everything. Yes, sir, thank you.
Yes, we were talking about the success rate of the proposals, but I would like to know the success rate of the funded projects.
The success rate of the funded projects.
In terms of Nobel Prizes, key emerging technologies after 20 years, no? There should be some metrics about that. No?
Okay.
Which was the actual outcome of the program?
I don't know it by heart. There is.
You don't know by heart? We can't.
No, the numbers are there, but I.
Sorry,
Maybe we can ask someone from the Commission.
Yes, do you know offhand? Can you answer that? Do you want a microphone? Here we go, thank you. Voila.
If you Google FET and Nobel Prize, you will get an answer of how many Nobel Prize were involved in the FET program, and there's quite a big list, in fact. So, and there are quite many which are currently involved in many of our...
I was talking about the projects that led to some concrete, real outcome. No? Yes, but which was the real outcome of the program after 20 years. Yeah, so, but I guess a lot of examples were given today. I mean, quantum was started 20 years ago, robotic, artificial intelligence were funded by FET 20 years ago, at a time where it was not necessarily popular topics, and now in the mainstream agenda, you see them everywhere. So, but I mean, you should ask the people there, not me.
Yeah, let's steal that back, and then there's a gentleman here. Thank you, audience, for waking up in the last 7 minutes when I'm supposed to release you. Very good of you. Is that how researchers and scientists work? Is it all, let's have a cup of tea for like an hour and a half and then get going? Yes, go. Yes,
what Emma just said.
Yeah.
Indeed, 20 years ago, the only source of funding, except for the national programs in Europe for artificial intelligence and robotics, was FET. And there was nothing else. And it has been the case for 5 years or so. And so all the themes from swarm robotics, neural networks, all this, they were all funded by FET. And maybe you don't get a Nobel Prize, but they made an enormous impact.
He was saying all of the projects were funded by FET. That was it, no one else previously. So Nobel Prize or not, that's where the important impact was. Okay.
But many important publications came from FET. There is this nice booklet that we received at the last program committee. I don't know if it's around here somewhere, but it's on the webpage for sure. And it gives you all the success of the FET program with publication and the results, of the different program.
So, sir, in the next conference, you can read it and we'll test you.
I think you are answering
yes.
my question.
Hang on. Shall I just go here first and then come to you? Yes, thank you.
I think you are answering my question. I wanted to know the statistics of the number of products coming out from FET. And the second point is, you didn't talk about the Launchpad project, idea, I don't know, program, let's say. It seems, from my understanding, was a way of transforming a good idea that comes from FET Open into a product. Do you have some numbers on that?
Again, I don't have the number, not because there are no numbers, but because I don't remember. So I don't know. I see Thomas there. I don't know if he's checking the numbers. So Launchpad has been also another successful program, but I cannot tell you. Maybe we should ask Thomas.
Thank you, Thomas.
He will comment on that.
Thank you. Yes. For those who are interested in understanding the impact of FET, FET Open and FET Proactives, have a look. In Google, there is a FET Traces report. We did a large impact assessment of the different projects. It's mainly FP7 and very, very beginning of Horizon 2020. Basically FP7. Horizon 2020 is too early to measure. And you will find out there are impacts in terms of careers of scientific researchers, huge impact. You will find out the impact on multidisciplinarity. You will find out an impact on the publications that you have. I can give you the numbers, but it's much better, and I give you the challenge to go and see. You will find a huge impact in terms of participating companies and spin-offs that we are creating. So, and you will find also the impact on the, I would say, on society, although this is a little bit more difficult to measure. If you're interested in figures, I can give you all of them. They are just in front of me. Just to take one example, it says here that 36% of projects have impact on more than 20 scientific fields. I don't remember the impact, for example, but I do remember that there are so much pioneering work that is coming out from FET Open that it becomes the reference when you have a publication in many different interdisciplinary works. And this is really an impact because you can see that many of you know that when you have interdisciplinarity, it's very difficult to publish in a given area. So, because nobody would say it's really me, it's somebody else, etc. So, if these works become reference worldwide, it means that really you have huge impact. I can continue for long like this. Just a word on the oversubscription. When we started FET Open, that is something like beginning 2014, so the first calls were a catastrophe. I mean, it's really, I'm not proud to say, but nevertheless, this is how it was, with success rates of less than 2%. So now, after 4 years or even 5 years of continuous efforts, I think we are now at an honest success rate, which is around 10%. So I invite you again to participate to our calls. It's not bad because there are many still outliers that are affecting the success rate. Nevertheless, the situation is improving, and it will further improve because now the budget will go up. As you know, unfortunately, we could not have the profile of the budget from the very beginning at high level. So we started with low budgets, and now every call is almost 20 to 30% more budgets that we put there. The next calls are around 160 million, when you think that we started with 70 or 80, if I remember well. And the last call is going to be around 200 million euros. So I hope that the success rate will be good enough to give satisfaction to many of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was very English clapping. That's how the English do it at tea time. So I'm going to read the energy in the room. I'm going to just ask, is there something critical in a sentence that needs to go out here that you didn't say? Yes, Dermot, please.
I think addressing this issue of impact is really difficult when you're talking about fundamental or basic research or low-level TRL research. It's very tricky to track a straight line from that type of activity to the creation of a new industry and jobs. And the problem for people who do that type of research, and when we get asked these direct questions, is that we're scientists. So we say we don't really understand how many jobs have been created. But we know one thing is that if you don't invest in this type of research, then those jobs are not going to be here. So it's a very, it's not a direct link between job creation and research, and we can't really often give answers, and we appear evasive then, and unlike fundamentalists who know the answers, the politicians who'll say it's 500 jobs, I could say, if you invest in FET, we create 100,000 jobs. Who knows what the answer actually is? Maybe it's 200,000, I don't know. But it's very difficult for anyone to criticize me if I give a number because nobody knows what the number is. But we can be certain of one thing. If we don't invest in this type of deep science and fundamental thinking, is that the jobs, the new industries, 20, 30 years from now will not be here.
Thank you. Last... Not obliged, but you agree. I love just seeing you do this. It's the best. It's the fabulous. Anything else, ladies and gentlemen, that needs to be put to these good people before I release them? No? That just made me think of Trump at the end when he said, I could say this many jobs. That's pretty much what he does, isn't it? You could have just invented it. So, thank you very, very much. First of all, a warm round of applause. It's the toughest slot of the day. Thank you very much, please, to all of my speakers. I just come up, I love those ideas, that courageous ideas, I think is great, those buzzwords, excellent. Europe has to be able to capitalize on its best science. I loved what you said about scientists need a free mind. We heard very much about the positive side of FET Open and FET Proactive. I like that quote. We haven't yet defined the killer applications. There's been huge evolution, but that's where we're at on the quantum side. All of that interesting, exciting stuff that's coming with the batteries, and be interesting to see how that evolves in the coming months. We hear all of you in terms of, where it sits, what you need. We're going to see how it all fits together with the EIC and the missions. That will be very, very exciting. And of course, the core of all of this is, what does it mean for the citizen? And that's really what is very interesting to me, coming from the outside to all of these discussions. So I hope that your brains are buzzing. Who, at the end of this first day, I know you're all terribly clever, but who takes away a nugget of something interesting that they would chat with a mate in a pub about? Put your hand up, the tiniest thing. Who comes here more informed, more motivated, more enthused, more well-connected, more productive than they did before they arrived this morning? Come on. Okay, about a third of you. That's not bad, that's okay. Could be better, but that's okay. Don't forget, there's a film screening. Cold War, 6 o'clock, so half an hour, Hall C, Level 2, okay? Please don't forget, don't be late tomorrow. Even if you're partying tonight on schnapps, do not be late tomorrow. Cybersecurity, what could be more important? That takes place in the plenary. It starts bang on 9:30, okay? Set your alarms, don't be late. I wish you all a very, very fabulous evening. Thank you very much. See you again.